Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Make It Monday, where today we're going to be um, doing top stitching on our jeans. If you're making a new pair of jeans for yourself or someone, or if you are hemming, how to get a really nice, well, professional looking top stitch to the seam. And I'm Jen here with Amy Sews. And today, like I said, we're going to go and talk about how to do a really good, nice top stitch, which sometimes is not that easy as it sounds. And actually, I have to thank my friend Brenda for asking me to do this topic because she had an issue where she wanted to go and hem a pair of jeans. They were a little too long. And she remembered how I showed it previously how to do that fake hem, that you preserve the original bottom finish of your jeans. However, her jeans were to the point where the bottom of the fabric was frayed and there was no way to go and utilize it. It could cut off and finish properly. So I'm going to take it back over to the top camera here so we can go and look a little closer. Hi, Jane. Welcome. So here I have the fabric, and as you would do normally, I had pressed it. So I have my fabric cut for allowing about a shy half inch, folded twice. So I have the inside of my fabric ready to go. And here I put orange thread in because quite often with jeans you have orange or a cream color thread in your needle. And I just wanted to show two differences. This is my normal stitch length. And this one over here is with a little longer stitch length, which I think looks a little better, a little more like ready-made, because quite often they do it, the top stitching with a longer stitch so that the thread really stands out. And quite often they do that also because they're working with a thicker thread. I'm working with standard sewing machine thread. And as you can see here, when I use my normal stitch length, 2.0 or 2.5, depending on your machine, it's okay, and it makes it look homemade, because it's very short. Where by lengthening it here, I went, I believe, to 3.2. It's laying more on top of the fabric, and it stands out, and it looks a little more like ready-made, which is the goal I wanted to do. However, whenever I was doing this, I wanted to point out the fact that I wanted, like I said, a little more like ready-made. And one of the ways to do that is to get a heavier thread for your top stitching. And there I got it. Now, one of the problems, though, is it's really hard to find a thicker thread in that color you need. Because quite often, if you can find a thicker thread, it may not be in the shade you want, the color family you want. And basically what I did was I went and created my own. Hi, Barbara. So basically what I did was I put two strands of the same thread through the eye of one needle. So I used a jeans needle, or you can use like a top stitch needle, which has a little larger eye that allows the thread to flow through a little easier. And as you can see here, just by adding that second thread, look how much it stands out, and the color really looks orangey there when you have that second thread. And this will work on any machine. What you want to do is when you're putting your thread spools on, and I'm purposely looking at it from the top down, that is not going to be the best way to put your thread. Meaning, as they're coming off the spool, they're all coming off in the same direction. So the threads are winding together. And what happens is when they do that, they end up twisting. And you can get lumps. You can get variations in the tension of your thread stitch, so it doesn't look as neat. So one of the best things to do is to alternate one. So in this case, I'm going to take this one and flip it over. And you can see how this thread spool is going to be counterclockwise, where this one is clockwise. So as they come in together, they're going to lay next to each other, much like they did here. and you'll get a really nice smooth stitch. So I'm going to go over to the machine, and I have it already set up. And basically what we're going to do is I have my stitch length at 3. If I want, I could actually go 3.2 if I need something a little longer, if that's the look I'm going for. And I have my tension a little less. So normally, if your tension, let's say, is 3.5, maybe bring it down to 3.1, 3.0, just a little less tension because you are having 2 threads going through the tension discs together. And one thing you'll notice too is my needle is not centered, it's more to the left. So what I did was I used my width control to position my needle to the left so I can look at the right side edge of my presser foot, and having that along the side of the hem is going to give me a really nice, straight, even stitch. The other thing too is I make sure I have my thread tails up and to the left. So when I go to sew, not only do I have the foot on the fabric, I also have the thread underneath the foot so it's not going to get caught inside and cause a little thread nest. And then just sew a little slower. I could use the speed regulation on my machine to turn it down. I'm on the Janome M17 right now to do that. And just go to the end. Now you can backstitch to secure, or if you want, you could just lift the foot up, give yourself a generous thread tail so that you can just pull it to the back and secure it off. And you can see here how nice that stitch looks. And it looks like a professionally done stitch done, say, in a factory. So that's one way to get a really nice clean look to your stitching and always have a nice finished garment. And here what I did was I did the same thing with the first one, and then I went down here and I edge stitched. And that way it gives it almost like that flat seam look if I wanted like a double stitching on my hem. Because I noticed the other day when I was looking at some jeans, they had the hem finished also like that, where they had a second row right toward the edge. All I did was here I moved my needle with control to reposition the needle from the far left, and then just kind of dial it over to the far right. And again, I use the very edge of the presser foot as a guide so that I'm looking there. So whenever I have all my, bring that foot over here. So as you have the foot on there, it's going to be just like that. And when I'm going to sew, I'm going to look right here on the right edge of the foot and the fabric so that I'll get a good straight parallel line to the side fold of the fabric. And I have the needle in the far left. And then when I come back around to do the edge stitching, I move my needle to the far right, and I use the same position of the foot to the edge of the fabric. And again, that's where I'm going to look, is right here. If I look at the needle or whatever, I'm going to get a little too dizzy. I'm not going to really focus well. And this all the way to the edge. When you get to, like, say, a side seam where it's a little bulky, that's where you may want to use one of these little buttons here, where basically there's an application with this brand that when you go engage it, it'll hold the foot in place, so it'll go over that thickness of a felled flat seam or even a normal side seam. There's also other little tools that you can even take and put behind the foot to lift it up just to hold it in place. Anytime you go to do a top stitch, I always stop with the needle in the down position. And basically for that, it's like if I have to reposition or move or turn a corner, I'm not going to skip a stitch. And Tina asked if I could use a twin needle for this. Good question. The thing is, if you could find a twin needle that's heavy enough because like I said, I'm using like a top stitch needle, and I believe it's a 100, maybe 110. So that's like a very heavy needle. And a lot of times these twin needles are like 80 or 90. So it's going to be a little lighter weight. Also, too, a lot of them don't have like a top stitch eye so that the thread can flow through really, really easily. So you may have a little difficulty in getting um, a twin needle to do that. So it's really nice because when you're doing with a twin needle, those stitches are perfectly parallel with each other. And that's another earmark of like a really good sewer. But if you know how your machine works, we're going back to the overhead right now. Okay, and I didn't plan this, and they're pretty well lined up, and they're far enough away too. Um, One of the things you do when you start to sew is maybe take a chalk line, maybe whatever, a straight pin, whatever, lining up here, and have the needle start at that same spot and go forward. And by doing that, you're going to get them to line up. So if it's important to having them match up, that's an easy way to do it. And one thing, Tina, I didn't stress too is a top stitch needle is less expensive than a twin or double needle, meaning that if one of those threads would snag, because you think of it too, if we don't aren't able to get that heavier thread, so we're going to go ahead and do 2 spools through the eye of the needle. That means we're going to be using 4 spools of thread because you're going to have 2 threads through the right needle and 2 threads through the left needle in order to get that heavy effect of top stitching on your jeans. And the likelihood of one of those threads catching, because now you're working with 4, really increase the odds of something going wrong to where you might get a snag and a knot or something that's going to cause one of those needles to deflect or bend, causing it to hit maybe the throat plate, the foot, and it's going to snap, and you just wasted that needle. So I think it's worth it just to go ahead and do it individually. And also it's quicker because when you're going to go sewing with a twin needle, you're going to have to slow down even more because there's a lot more going on underneath. You got all those 4 threads coming down, matching up with 1 bobbin thread, doing that zigzag stitch on the back, and also tweaking the tension, because if you don't have the tension light enough, you're going to end up with the fabric billowing up in between the stitching line. So here, when you can see that the fabric is perfectly flat and smooth on both sides, what's going to happen is the fabric in between the 2 rows is going to bubble up a little bit. So if your tensions are too heavy, so you're going to have to lighten up on them so that it will lay flat, and it's going to be a lot of pressing. So I think it's a little too much work in order to get that to do that. So personal preference. So when you're when you're working with the jeans, it's a little different animal. So you're going to want to take a couple of extra precautions, slowing down your speed, and using the right size needle, and of course finding the right thread. And one of the things too, I still got to point out, is this is the same color thread, same spool. And look at the difference by just having a double weight of it. It really pops out. Now, one thing I forgot to mention too was, hi, Rain, thank you. One of the things I want to point out too is that when you go to buy your thread, like I said, you won't be able to find most every color in a heavyweight top stitch thread. So that's why we're making our own. And if you're only going to do a little bit of top stitching, let's say around the side of those slacks, the bottom hem, whatever, instead of investing in 2 spools of thread, you could probably get away with getting 1 large spool. And then what you do is you wind a bobbin with 1. And that's what I did with my example here. And I just went and put a bobbin on the top. So as you can see on the machine, I have 1 spool of thread, and then I have the other one with my bobbin doing it. So that way I didn't have to invest in 2 full spools of thread. I only had to use the 1. And my bobbin thread, it's just a single thread. Yeah, Barbara, I did. Yeah, you do want to go into, if you're going to do a twin needle and you want to get the heavier thread, you're going to have to deal with 4 threads. And unfortunately, my M17 only has 2 thread capability right now. So that's why you're going to have to go, and you may want to rethink that too. Okay, Barbara had a good question, and that was the next thing I was going to bring up was, could I use a twin needle? Instead of twin needle, could I do a triple stitch? Yes, you could do a triple stitch. However, it doesn't look as nice. And by meaning that is that whenever you go to sew it, the machine does a forward, backward, forward motion. And you know what? Since you just asked that, and yeah, the triple will be triple stitch. No, triple is with 1 spool. I'm going to take you over to the machine. And this is totally impromptu. Wasn't planning on doing this, but we're going to do it. So I'm going to go on my M17. I've selected a triple stitch, and basically it shows like a single line stitching like we had before. However, it also has 2 more showing right next to it. And I'm going to stop my foot, and my thread came undone. So we're just going to get the machine re-threaded up. And a lot of you are probably saying, okay, why don't you use a needle threader? Well, guess what, guys? My needle threader is designed to work with 80, 90 size needles. I'm using a much heavier needle in here. And by doing that, the guide or that little wire that pushes the thread through may not be in the right position. And by using my needle threader for a wrong size needle could actually cause that little wire to deflect, bend, or break, which means I'm going to have to go and have that fixed. So I'm going to go right along this side here. Again, I got my threads under my presser foot, and I'm going to move my needle all the way to the right. So I'll do the bottom edge stitch with it. There we go. And as you can see, as it goes, it does like a little traveling stitch, forward, backward, forward. And it's a little more difficult to keep it in line. I'm kind of far away from the machine so that I can have the camera in front of me. But you can see the bottom one has a triple stitch. I forgot to lengthen it. So I'm going to do another one right up toward the end here, just to show the difference that once I go to lengthen it, it'll look more like the row above it. And my foot's in the same position, and it automatically went a little slower because it's a longer stitch. And it's more traveling that the machine has to go because it's moving the fabric forward and backward to do that. So that one didn't turn out too bad. Let me go back to the overhead so we can see it a little clearer. So the top one is using 2 threads. The bottom one is doing 1 thread and a triple stitch. And you can see here, this is where it's the normal stitch length. And again, that top one looks better. So they look pretty, I'm kind of impressed with that machine because it really did a really great triple stitch. One of the problems though is that depending on your machine, when you're doing that forward, backward, forward motion, it may cause the stitch actually to shrink up a little bit in between, getting a little thicker, where this is very even on with crossbutting. In that case, it looks more like a seed stitch, something they use in machine embroidery. So again, it's playing with your machines and your settings. And again, I had my tension on the thread a little reduced because of the length I was doing. And when I went to the same length as the top one, it looks a lot better. The stitches look individually a little smaller, and that's because it is pulling back on itself. That's why that gap or that little black dash almost that's between each stitch looks a little bit longer on the bottom one. And that's because, again, the machine is as it's sewing it, it's doing a forward, backward, forward motion as it's doing each stitch. And by doing that, it's going to pull the fabric tighter together. And Sharice, whenever I did the bobbin that was in the machine, I made sure it was full. And the one that was on top, I did it half full. And that's only because I knew I was going to do a whole lot of top stitching. Everybody's selection of doing things a little differently. And triple stitch with just 2 spools. Yes, Barb. So you're just going to have, if you're going to do the triple stitch, I would just put your needle thread and then your bobbin thread, both matching. And that's it. And then, I didn't show this either. On the back side where I had that, you can see here where here's like mine, and this is with the triple stitch. So you're going to use more bobbin thread also because it's going to that forward, backward, forward motion. Not only are you using 3 strands of the needle, you're doing like 3 strands of your bobbin. Whereas one over here, that's with the single weight in the bottom, and here has a double weight in the needle. Okay. So I hope that helps. Okay. So any questions? It's pretty simple. You may want to, whenever this is uploaded, you may want to go back and watch it again because it's pretty simple. It's just going to take a little time, a little thought on how to do it. And again, if you have the control on your machine, slow it down. So it actually you're not going to have any issues with thread tension or needle breakage, just sew a little better. Yeah, thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. Again, this a little common sense thing: sharp, fresh needles. Make sure your machine's clean so that if you it has a tendency of building up more lint, so you may want to go ahead and make sure everything's clean and neat so that you don't have any little surprises later on by having a little thread bulge popping up somewhere. And good lighting. And if you're going to be filming the next day, the day before, don't do any home improvements, otherwise you're going to end up with a couple smash pounds too, and it doesn't look good on film. Anyway, hope that helps. And be sure to follow us here and tell a friend and share the love of what we all like to do. And of course, if you're in the Harmony, Pennsylvania area, be sure to stop into our store, Amy Bachman Sewing Quilt, where the film studio is attached to it. So we'd love to have you in. And of course, we have lots of classes. Just go to the website and check out what we have to offer there. And also upcoming programs, we can Make It Mondays. Or if you have a suggestion for Make It Monday, just go to Support at Amy Sews, and in the subject line, put Attention Gym, Make It Monday, and we can make it happen. And if you like what we have to say too, you can follow us here, and also you can follow me on the Original Sewing Quilt Expo page, where there's one of the instructors there, so you never know what could be here coming up soon. So again, thanks for watching. I appreciate everything you do for us. And remember to share your love of sewing with your friends, because the more you know, the more you sew. Take care and have a great day.